We're live, 7:04, a couple minutes late. Had a lot of stuff to go through. Not a problem. It's Friday night. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Tonight we are going to talk about really good ideas that just don't really seem to work, unfortunately. And that includes the thumbnail that I put up, which is really cool. And I got this from the guys at Nitrous Express, who obviously know a thing or two about nitrous and all of their stuff that I've tested in terms of injecting nitrous into the motor, including, and we'll start with that, I guess, using nitrous going into the intake manifold as the intercooler. So what I did was we had a turbo application, replace the air-to-air or air-to-water intercooler because we ran both, replace that with just using nitrous, because as we know, on paper, it seems like an ideal situation. Nitrous is negative 129 degrees at its boiling point when it changes phase, basically from a liquid to a gas. So if we inject negative 129 degrees stuff into our stuff that might be 200 or 300 degrees, the resulting thing will be really, really cold and everybody will be happy, except it doesn't work that way. When we did nitrous as the intercooler, where the intercooler might drop at between 100 and 150 degrees, depending on what temperature we actually do the test at, or depending on what boost level and temperature we actually do the test at. Injecting nitrous, in this case, it was like 125 or 150 shot or something, only reduced the charge temperature by about 30 degrees. And that includes, we're injecting both nitrous and fuel. So super cold nitrous, negative 129 degrees, which is very, very cold, and fuel, which we know has a cooling effect also, because every time we've tested the charge temperature under a carburetor, or if we inject it like a water method injection system, that seems to work very well. But we got very little cooling. And the reason that it doesn't work is not because negative 129 isn't cold enough. There's just not enough of it. In our case, we were running 800 horsepower worth of hot air and 100 or 125 or 150 horsepower worth of very cold oxygen molecules, and the resulting temperature change just wasn't very much. It was only about 30 degrees, which is not enough to qualify nitrous, in this case, as an intercooler, or at least an effective one. It did dramatically change the power output, which we like. Raised the power, raised the boost, did all kinds of good things, because turbos like nitrous, and everything likes nitrous, and it works very well. And it did in our case. It's just that as well as it worked for making more power, it just didn't work well for intercooling. So the other thing, and this is the thumbnail that I had up, because while we were testing these other things, we also tested that. The other thing that I did was we used the intercooler ring, which basically is a big aluminum ring with holes drilled in it. And what you do is it has a fitting on it, and you screw in you connect the nitrous solenoid to it. And then what you do is, instead of the nitrous being injected into the motor, it's being released into this ring, and you attach the ring to your air-to-air intercooler, and then it basically fogs the air-to-air intercooler with negative 129 degree nitrous going through this. There are a couple, and this sounds like a great idea, right? Really, really super cold stuff, and you can then get effectively you can make your transfer medium colder than ambient, because that's the thing with an air-to-air intercooler, is that you can't ever, even if you were 100% effective, which you never are, you can never get your discharge temperature down to ambient, because you're using something that's ambient to cool it with, and it's not going to be 100% effective. So you can never get it down to ambient. When you use air to water, especially when you use ice water, if your transfer medium is less than ambient air, then you can get the charge air down to ambient. Or if it's really, really cold, like in the case of ice water, you can get it even colder than that. So the idea is that using nitrous, which is negative 129, we super cool the air-to-air intercooler core, and then put our hot boosted air through that, and it works very good as a cooler. Again, it just didn't work as well on paper as we were hoping that it was going to. It's better certainly than not having it, but not enough better to warrant, certainly not enough to warrant the use of nitrous. Now, maybe if you used CO2 or something that's, similarly cold, and cold enough that it's way below ambient air temperature and that you could definitely get cooling changes from, and it would be less expensive to do that. But even then, it's just not great. What I always wanted to do was submerge the air-to-air intercooler in something like liquid nitrogen. And let's get it really cold, and let's get the whole thing cold. And then that way we could get the thing, hopefully, it would be cool to get the charge temperature, from 200 or 300 degrees down to 0. that would be awesome. And then we would see some really big power gains, which is what we see when the Jeff Smith did the testing with the guys from compressed air supercharging. That's what you see. You see charge errors that are down near 0. And that's why they make so much power relative to the amount of boost. Like, you can improve the power output of your NA motor by 100% at only 7 pounds. It's really pretty amazing. And you can run full timing, and they did all kinds of cool stuff. So having really, really cold air, obviously beneficial, but the ways that I was showing you, both with using nitrous as the intercooler on a turbo application and then using our power ring on an air-to-air, just not nearly as effective as we would want them to be. What I would want is, okay, we're injecting negative 129, and then now we got the charge temperature down to like 50 or 60 would be awesome. 20 or 10 would be even better. But a realistic amount, like at 50 or 60 degrees, is good. And we've done that before with ice water in air-to-water intercoolers, because your transfer medium now is like 32 or 33 degrees. So when you're forcing all that air through a good-sized core that has good cooling and has very, very cold ice water going through it, it's very cool. And that's what we did at Bonneville. Is you can actually watch on the data logging, you can watch the charge temperature drop during the run. And then at the end, it will actually start to kind of come back up a little bit. But it's very cool to have it be 100 degrees or 95 degrees outside, and then having the air charge temperature be, 55 or 60 at 15 or 16 or 17 pounds of boost. It's a really good thing, and your motor loves it. Turbo motors really, really like that. They sound better. They make obviously a lot more power, and they're much happier, and they're much safer because you have cold air. It's going to ward off detonation. All of that is good. So these are some of the things that I've tried that, they're kind of internet mythy kind of things. And I wanted to demonstrate, I wanted to know whether or not that's, because we've seen that on, time attack cars and various different things where we run CO2. The other problem you have with running anything else through an air-to-air intercooler, whether we're injecting nitrous or CO2, is that you need to do it in such a way that the motor, like the inlet, cannot grab any of that. Like, it can't grab CO2, which is not going to be good, but it can't grab nitrous, which will, if it grabs the nitrous, it's going to make more power, but only if you have the required amount of fuel and you've taken away the required amount of timing for whatever that kind of nitrous shot would be as a secondary thing going across your core. So you want to make sure that that's very important, that you're not killing the motor because you have you're trying to combust something that's not combustible, or you're trying to combust something that's like very combustible once it gets in the combustion chamber, and nitrous adds a lot of power. So if you're going to do that, make sure that you do that properly. Either don't grab the bad stuff, or if you're going to grab the good stuff, make sure that the rest of the tune is like on board with all of that. And then the gains you're going to get, as I said, are not going to be from it being cold. It's going to be from it being nitrous, which is, is never a bad thing. Turbos and nitrous, they go really well together. Again, your tuning window gets, very, very narrow, but if it's right, it works really well. And it's a good way also to, a lot of guys use it to spool up big turbos and all like that. We didn't have to on our Bonneville car, we really didn't have to worry about using our air-to-water intercooler with ice water. We didn't have to worry about spool up. But if you're at a drag strip and you're using a big turbo, especially if you're trying to combine a big turbo with a smaller motor, you need boost response, and then nitrous is a really, really easy way to get that. Just even a simple like 50 shot or something will. Kevin, dry ice and alcohol ever used in air to water intercooler? I've not used dry ice and alcohol. I would be a little concerned about the volatility of that. I would like to try to get it colder than we see, colder than 32 degrees would be nice. That's why I was talking about trying the, and we'd obviously have to do that from afar, from a safety standpoint, because I think the gas produced why liquid nitrogen is not good to ingest. And we have a big fan system inside the dyno cell, so that wouldn't be a problem. But it would be cool to use liquid nitrogen to like super cool it, as long as the welds and all that stuff in the air-to-air intercooler would actually take that, because obviously we would hate to break that and then ingest liquid nitrogen into the motor. That would not be good. But if we could get it really, really cold, that would be awesome. And long before COVID, the guys from the compressor supercharger company, they're the guys that used to run NOS, contacted me about doing a test with them, and I'd like to do that because it would be very, very cool. But I've never tried dry ice and alcohol. I don't know that I would. Just like I said, that's pretty volatile. And the dry ice, yeah, Grooves pointed out a good thing. Dry ice is a little specific heat, as allows you to have cooling stuff. It's most of it just like turns immediately into a gas, so it's really not that cold. Dump 10 pounds of ice into a 5-gallon bucket of water. Pay attention to temperature drop. Then try it again with dry ice. The real ice works way better. Yeah, we've seen that. What you want to do though is add salt to the water, and that will bring the temperature down. When you release air into the intake, as it decompresses, it cools a lot. Yeah, their temperatures were very low on the compressor stuff. A few squirrels in my freezer that attack my bird feeder. Well, they should know better then, right? A good idea is rear mount twin turbos on my 6-liter Sierra, but will it work, and how well is the real question? Yes, it will work, and it will work very well. Remote stuff works good. Alan, the compressor supercharging company was tested at West Tech. And like I said, like we talked about earlier, those were the guys that originally did NOS. NOS. What if you put dry ice? I don't think that that's very effective. Compressor cooling aided intercooling. The problem is, where does the other energy come from? Yeah, Jerry, we covered that you don't want the engine ingesting carbon dioxide or any gas unless it's nitrous, but only if you have the tune corrected for that. Seeing liquid nitrogen used on computer CPUs for supercooling, yeah, they do use it, but as long as everything that the liquid nitrogen would be transferring through is obviously set up for that, so that's important. And more than probably, I don't know because I haven't tested it yet, but more than likely your typical aftermarket aluminum tank air to water or air to air intercooler is probably not, because I think that's the way that I would do it, because we had talked about trying to flow liquid nitrogen through an air to water intercooler, and I don't think that's the way to go. I think that the pump would be a difficulty. I think the transfer tubes and all that would be difficulty with that kind of temperature. So rather than that, I was thinking I'm just going to build a tank that I could submerge an air-to-air core in with just basically the tube sticking out. the in and the out, and then we could fill it with, you know, if the core is 3 inches thick or whatever, we don't have to use a ton of liquid nitrogen. We could just fill up the however big the core is. I would make a steel or aluminum container and then just get it in there and then fill it up beyond the level of the core. So the core is super cooled, and then run a test. And then obviously you'd want to warm the engine up. There would be logistics because you'd want to warm the engine up and get it ready to test, and then pour the stuff in, and then maybe throw a big adjustment on your tune, because you'd make a few runs and tune the thing and go, okay, maybe we would try, like what I would do is, what I wanted to do was try like dry or ice water first. So we put the air to air intercooler in it, just run it the way that it is, maybe spray water on it, do that test, put it in water, try that test, put it in ice water, try that test, and then put it in, you know, throw a bunch of fuel at it, and then try the liquid nitrogen and see, and then obviously monitor charge temperatures. It would be kind of cool. I would just like to do it because then you get to work with liquid nitrogen, which would be cool. How do I make my lawnmower faster? Well, the thing that you'd want to do is put an electric supercharger on it. And by electric supercharger, I mean an electric smog pump from like a modular Ford. What is the best way to intercooler remote mount turbo? You do need to do it. It's the remote mount doesn't take away the need for an intercooler, and you mount the intercooler the same way that you do anything else. Just mount it up in front of the radiator. Take your lawnmower to drag week. That'd be good. Built a prototype cooler using a refrigerator core in the tank and flowed the water to the air to water cooler. Some guys are using AC circuits. We've seen that. The factory has done that. Tim, you changed one of the drive sprockets on your riding lawnmower and went 45 miles an hour with a 5 horsepower motor. Have you tested chilled fuel? Yeah, that video is up. I chilled EFI fuel, and it didn't really do anything. Another fun fact, there was also additives that were sold added to your gas tank that were supposed to make your exhaust smell like different flavors. If you could have it smell like vanilla or like chocolate chip cookies or something. My wife has a 0-turn mower. I don't think I'd like to drive at that speed. Yeah, 45 seems like a lot. Have you tested chilled fuel? Yeah, like I said, I didn't do it with a carburetor. I did it with EFI. And what I did was, if you look at the video, it's up. What I did was run the fuel through an oil cooler, which I submerged the oil cooler in a 5-gallon bucket full of ice water, and it brought the fuel temperature down pretty dramatically, but it almost had no effect on power. Richard, I mow my grass 1/4 mile at a time. For those 10 seconds, I don't see my wife. There's not 10 seconds that I don't want to see my wife, but everybody has their own thing. With a 3.5-inch turbo outlet pipe and a 4-inch throttle body, should the pipe diameter be increased to 4-inch before and after the intercooler? It does. It's going to make less of a difference before, but after the intercooler, I would do it just because it makes hooking the pipe up easier. You won't ever notice a difference in power from doing that stuff, from juggling that stuff. I would kind of like to put one of those electric smog pump superchargers on the Trail 90. Been thinking about doing that because I think it needs more power. I've made basic fuel cooling with a coffee can or copper pipe. You can do that for it doesn't work that well though. You can do that with carbureted fuel lines, but with EFI stuff, that's not going to work very well. That's why we did the oil cooler was a much better way because the surface area is much greater on an oil cooler. So Casey, you're already trying to figure out why it won't work. Should go like positive instead of going negative. Just think about the positive stuff. Yeah, it's going to super cool it and it's going to make 1,000,000 horsepower. Be cool to see some BMWs. I agree. I've owned a few of them and we like them. There's no humidity in the discharge. It's humidity free. There's no condensation. There's no liquid of any kind. I have a twin turbo V12 Mercedes. I almost bought one of those. I really like those. Did you see Garage 54? I do like Garage 54 stuff. I really likes me some crazy Russian dudes. They did a top mount turbo V8 with a carb feeding the turbo, and the pipe kept freezing up. It does get cold. Maybe a WRX, probably not a WRX, but a third gen RX-7 I would be all about. I've driven WRXs on the track. My buddy Gary Sheehan had one and let me drive it, and it was a lot of fun. But it's just not one of the things that speaks to me. A third gen RX-7 definitely does. I'm still buzzing over Skog and Dickey's turbocharged 4.3 liter LV3. Those are cool. Travis, Richard, do you think that a modular 4 electric smog pump would work for PCV to reduce internal condensation on a turbo? I don't know if just circulating that or not what effect that would have on condensation. You could cool the charge in 2 stages. That's one thing I do want to try is I do want to do a Twintercool deal. I want to do 2 different coolers. So we get a big chunk from the first one, which I would do air to water on both of them. And then I probably would do, if I did it right, I would do just regular ambient water in the first one and then ice water in the second one. Allows to bolt the turbo to the head and carb to the turbo. Yeah, getting a carburetor mounted to a turbo is not hard at all. That's just an adapter. Scrolling back, trying to find one. Yeah, Kevin, 700 horsepower, 14.5 pounds. That's about right, because that motor should be 300 or more than 300, the way that you run it on an engine dyno. What about big in-tank pumps with return system? Is there a benefit to cooling the fuel with EFI? There is, that not from a power standpoint, but just from a vapor lock standpoint. A lot of guys were going through that, I guess, on drag week, and probably Rocky Mountain and the others where they have to drive these things, and they run into fuel temperature issues. So we ran into that on our Max, which was a blue 1977 Chevy dually big block, the truck that we used to tow our race trailer with, and we ran into vapor lock. It was only a carbureted one, but fuel injected stuff would be similar. So we made we had the pump, we had the mechanical fuel pump flowing through, which was basically a little oil cooler. I think it was a you know, I think it might have been a power steering cooler, but it was a small one. And we flowed the fuel through there to cool the fuel off, and then with a rubber hose, and then into the carburetor, and that worked wonders. We also took insulating foam and covered the fuel lines in the tank, because what happens is, especially when you're lugging up a hill, is that those exhaust manifolds can just be glowing red hot, and everything in there gets hot, so it's not a good thing. So we also made a cold air for the carburetor and stuff, and just, you know, try to cool things off. Can we get a Gen 3 Hemi head test, 6.1 versus Eagle versus Apache? That's fairly involved because of the change in chamber size, fairly dramatic. When are you going to finish the Buick 455? I don't know. Brian, my boss and I like to flip GM trucks and SUVs. Are there any muscle sports cars that you think would be flippability? I don't look at the industry like that, like as a money-making thing. So I'm not sure about that. I did a TO4E on a Ford 200 Crosswell 6 with a Weber 2-barrel. Crossover pipe got really cold. Worked well for the $300. Thermoelectric plates. I don't want to do it electrically. Like, I don't want to use a refrigeration or AC cooling system. I don't want to do that. I'd rather use ice water, because we've been using that for a really long time. We know that it works well. The pre-cooler stuff interests me for doing that possibly on an NA motor. I think that would be interesting, but the other stuff, probably not so much. What makes water wetter give an improvement most noticeable when you have the majority of the coolant as water? I think that it transfers better with the water wetter. Will the 2.2 liter need nitrous to hit 1,000 horsepower? We won't ever try to do that on a 2.2. If we do a high horsepower one, it'll be a 2.5, and I'm pretty sure that nitrous would help it definitely get there. Richard, could you get Jay Leno on your channel? But as you've noticed, it's only me here talking, and I don't think Jay would want to come to my house. I will be doing interviews later on, though. Jay wouldn't allow Richard to get a word in edgewise. Jay is the king of interrupting. I'm kind of notorious for that, too. My problem is that whenever somebody's talking, I always think of something that needs to be said while they're talking. And in my defense, it's timely, because comedy, and I'm sure obviously Jay knows better than I do, but comedy is timely. So when they say something, you have to say it. If you wait till they're done to their long tirade, then the moment is lost for the joke to come out. And so you have to say it right away, because what the rest of the thing that they're saying is not as important as that joke coming out. Had a friend that believed in velocity stacks help air transition into a carburetor. They definitely do. A carburetor flows more with an air stack on it than it does without. is the North Star engine that you got a front wheel drive? It's from a Cadillac North Star. So is that a front wheel drive? I'd like to see a twin charge setup, an Eaton PDS, and a nice turbo. Well, take a look. We already have that up. I did that on the 3800 V6. We ran the Eaton supercharger, the M90, the factory one, and we ran it with a turbo. Are you doing anything with the Bear? I do have 2 of them, which we're supposed to do something with. Mexico City's in the house. Pre-cooling with a turbo would make a big difference in spool up. I would think so. I have tested rotary engines, if that's what you're asking. I've done chassis dyno testing on RX-7s, first gen ones mostly, but not on the engine dyno. I do want to do a Triton V10 as well. I've only done 4G63s on the chassis dyno, but not on the engine dyno. Ben, you're late. I bet Richard does a Triton that the aftermarket will explode. Normally what happens is the price and everything goes up. But I think that that one's probably safe. I would like to do a rotary. I just don't have one. Oliver has one, which we might put on the dyno, which would be kind of cool. Alberta Canada's in the house. And for anybody that asks me about my thoughts on something, you need to just rephrase your question because I don't answer thoughts questions. And Larry, you need to be patient. It's Friday. Not every day needs a poll. Sometimes we're pollless. Okay, the poll for tonight is: do we need a poll on every live feed? Yeah. Will you do any Japanese civil over Cam V8s? I'd like to do both the Nissan and the 1UZ Toyota. They're just, on the list. Is the new GM 6.6 an LT base engine? Yes. If you did 2 polls per day, would that make you bipolar? Yes, definitely. Ford 4.9 EFI and a T5 in an early Mustang. Yeah, if you're the 6-cylinder crowd, that's kind of different. Will a Holley HP run a 90-degree 10-cylinder? I think that there is a drop-down menu in the Holley HP for a 10-cylinder. I can't swear that. You know what? I might be able to look that up right now. So let's step into Mr. Wizard's laboratory, and oh no, I can't open that up because I only have that on my laptop. My bad. That's only laptop. After the Omni, why not a first or second gen RX-7? No, I won't do that. What I'll do, the Z will get running, and then the Mustang. How about small displacement engines, 4-bangers like 1600 cc's? You mean like all the Honda B series stuff that I have up on the dyno or up on the site already, or the channel already? 1600 cc and below, high compression, high RPM stuff. Nope, not interested in doing real high RPM NA stuff because you just can't. it gets really, really expensive to make lots and lots of power with a turbo stuff. It's just easy. Mike, I have considered doing a Patreon, and my original goal was to do that the first year that I was on, and it just still hasn't gotten done yet. Any updates on the Nova? Yeah, the motor's out of it, the turbo diesel that he put in it. A naturally aspirated 5-liter rotary engine has been calculated to make over 1,200 horsepower. I'd be surprised if it did that. And how many rotors would that be? Because the 4-rotor was nowhere near that. An NA4 rotor was nowhere near that. And also, how are you calculating displacement for the rotary? RX3s are really nice. Get the Mustang going. That's my goal. Next year, the Omni will be running, the Z needs to be running, and the Mustang needs to be. They all need to be driving. Food, and I have Honda B Series stuff up already. You think a Vortec 5-cylinder is stronger than a 6-cylinder? I don't know, just because it's shorter, I don't know that inherently means that it's stronger. 1200cc Opal, I do like those. I like Opals, especially if it's a GT or a Cadet. Two rotors was only 80 cubic inches. That's not how they factored it in IMSA. How about really small stuff? Like I have a 1-liter Chevy Sprint motor. Yeah, the Atlas 5-cylinder has a balance shaft. Does the 4-cylinder version of that also have a balance shaft? You need to build an 8.1 on boost. Well, you're in luck because I've already run an 8.1 with boost. Mike, maybe someone can find you a BMW V12 to test. Basically a McLaren V12. Oh, sure. Like a 750 motor is exactly like a McLaren V12. .3 2-rotor. It did make 241 rear wheel horsepower. That's quite a bit. An 8-liter Magnum. I have seen one of those in the wrecking yard. I just need to get to the 360 Magnum that I have. I also kind of want to do a 318. Noodles is in the house. Quad 4 would be good. The BMW V12s are very different than the McLaren V12. I know because I'm an 850. Yeah, they're a far cry from what's a 750 V12? What is that, like a 300 horsepower motor or something? 750 IL V12 power output. 322 horsepower at a 5.3 liter. That's a pretty far cry from, what was it, 650 or 660 or something. Racer D, you have an SHO Taurus motor? I like those. How about a Pontiac overhead cam 6-cylinder? Unfortunately, I missed out on the one from Liv It might still be available, but she had needed to get rid of it before I could get over to pick it up. And it's over, I guess, at a friend's house or something, so we might still try to put something together. Any plans to do a Big Bang 4.3 or LT1? I don't want to do a Big Bang on one of those, but I would like to. I want to combine the two and make a DZ302 Gen 2, and then we could certainly run boost on that. But what is the madness? Of course you need a poll. Yeah, but everybody's not saying yes. Only 63% are saying yes, we need a poll on every live feed. What happened to 5-valve motors? I used to own one of those. A 4AGE black top. Ooh, not a silver top or a red top. Maybe it's 1 horsepower per liter. I think you mean 100 horsepower per liter, probably. And a stock V16A has stepped into the discussion. I've only ever run SHO Taurus motors with the guys from the show shop on the chassis dyno, but not on an engine dyno. They've done a lot of stuff with them. Back in the day they did cams and heads and intakes and blowers and all kinds of stuff. The McLaren V8s are based off the Nissan Race V8s. No, I didn't know that. Get a 660cc Kai car. I do like the Kai class cars. I'm a big fan. When I wrote my book on sport compact cars, essentially, which never came out, at least I got paid for it. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do Kai class cars, but they said the market wasn't big enough for that. If I change my cam, will my lifters stay up, not fall down? Should I pull heads on my LS? Well, you don't have an LS1 5.3 because those are not the same thing. A 5.3 would be an LM7 or some iron-headed thing. An LS1 would be a 5.7. If it has 120,000 miles on it, it might be that the lifter trays are still good. You can rotate your camshaft and listen and see if the lifters take your disconnect your rockers, take your push rods out, and then rotate the motor and listen. You can hear if the lifters stay up, then they'll stay up. When you rotate, if they go up and then they fall back down, you're gonna need to slide dowels in there. We'll have 5 new Tauruses. Wow, 89, 91, 93, 95, and a used 91. 5-valve VW. I think that they determined that 4 valves was kind of the optimum combination of flow. The new microphone works well. The microphone is the same. The only thing I did was isolate the hard drives, which were making noise. They're actually vibrating. Listen, they were vibrating on the table, and the mic was picking that up. Eighth valve. You're saying that a 4AGE makes a less power and more torque than a Honda? The more torque thing I would find hard to believe given the VTEC of a Honda. You appreciate the irony of voting no to polls in a poll. Three tiny little intake valves. Chupacabra versus a Chuck Norris. I don't have a Chupacabra cam, but Brian said that he's up for it any day of the week. Lost a 2.6 liter V6 was underrated. Richard, did you see the new Corolla GR coming out? I haven't. 1.6 liter 3-cylinder turbo, 300 horsepower. Are we getting that in the United States, or is that only going to be available somewhere else where they limit our fun? K Dailies, I think everybody here has seen the guy that did the straight 6 with the LS head stuff. Did he actually get it running yet? Have you ever thrown a 5.3 Vortec back together without a hone? Yes, all the time. I've been told recently by the wizards of Reddit, which is where I would go get all of my automotive information, that apparently a 3-valve WAP 4.6 blocks are stronger than the Texid block. You may want to ask Mahovitz about that. Oh, specifically built for North America. Great. Richard, could you do a comparison of the double overhead cam 4-valve heads for the modular stuff versus the 2-valve stuff? I think I probably have that flow data already. Have you done a big bang on a 4.2 liter Ford? I don't know that I've ever even seen one in person. Flex capacitor. I saw the 351 Cleveland headed deal that the guy did. Noodles, did you gloss over my question about twin turbos and shake your head? I don't know. I didn't see the question, obviously. Man, we're down to 59% saying yes that we need poles. So obviously, people are not a fan of poles. Three YouTubers have 300 LS headed projects and only one almost started. Do you have a GoFundMe page for viewers to contribute to the Big Bang testing? No, but you can do super chats. What kind of displacement can be had with a 4.63 valve buildup? They do 5-liter stuff a lot. People don't like to research or learn either. That's really true because people, whenever people ask a question, I tell them, look, there's a video up on that already. Well, can you give me a link? No, I tell them no, but if you search this and this and this, like if you just if you just took your question and instead of sending it to me and having me spoon feed you, if you took that question and put it in the search section and pushed enter, you would get your answer because the first thing that comes up is my video and the answer to your question, but they don't want to do that. Okay, have you ever run a conventional twin turbo setup but with different size turbos? No, I haven't. We did run 2 dissimilar size turbos, twins, on a 4-cylinder, and it does not work. One of them wants to backfeed the other one because you have a change in response rate. So if they're both hooked up to a common plenum, you will have whatever turbo wants to spool up quicker, it will backfeed the other one. Doing 2 different size turbos is not going to give you, and I know what you want one to spool up quicker than the other one to be for the top end. It's not going to work like that. Are you going to No Name Nationals? No, I don't drag race very much. I'm sure that that's what that is, right? Been rebuilding the windshield on a C-Ray all summer long. As long as it doesn't make the 4.6 sound like a coyote. You don't like the way that the coyote sounds like? I do like the way that I like the Terminator motors. Did you see Evan Smith defending Ford and the Mustang? Because everybody said the same thing that you just said, that the Mustang looks like a Camaro. And then he went into this big tirade about, and I love Evan, and obviously he's helping the guys from Ford out. But I think what happened, and I haven't even read it, I haven't even looked at it honestly, so I don't know. I can't really comment on it. But I think a lot of people are saying that yeah, the new Mustang looks like a Camaro, and Ford just copied the Camaro, and they're all like, no, that never happened, and the Mustang came first, and then yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. I have twin turbo setup on my 2017 Mustang, 6466 Precisions, ball bearing, Gen 2s. That should work really well, right? Your 17 is a Coyote Mustang, right? Again, you know why engine swap supply? I don't know what that is, but I'll try to answer. I'll read the rest of your question. Would refuse to give me their address because they aren't on the Better Business Bureau. Why won't let you pick up parts in person? I don't know what that is. So you're asking the wrong guy. What swap would you do to make 500 horsepower in a Bronco? I don't know what year Bronco it is, but a 351 Windsor could do that fairly easy. Richard, how will that's hard to say, the AFR 195 race port work on a 392? Well, just Terry, look at the flow rate of that head, and Airflow Research has the flow numbers on their site. Look at the flow rate of that head, and then multiply it by 2, and then tell me if that's how much power you want to make out of your 392. Will it support that power level? My guess is it probably will. Isn't there some modular block that can take a lot of power and boost? Yes, the Texid block, that's the one that Bohovich uses, and he's making a bajillion horsepower. So yes, that block will take a lot. They now make with the guys from, I don't know who it was. Who are the guys that make all of the like Top Fuel stuff? Bohovich was working with them, and they made a billet Coyote block. Checked out for a minute. 105 millimeter. I'm sure. Are you talking about turbo or throttle body? Because either one of those would be no. A bajillion is a lot. The 462 valve is the best one of the bunch. Certainly. We always say that about whatever thing that we have. How long until a Godzilla 7.3? I think now I'm probably never going to do one of those. A BAE, maybe that's who it was. How strong are the 384s that came with the Eaton M90s in the Thunderbird Super Coupes? I don't know. I've never tried to push one of those. And I did, oddly, not too long ago, I put a video up on it. I did see 2 of those on the same day, which were the only 2 that I've ever seen in a wrecking yard. Hey, there's nothing wrong with lurking. What turbo would I need to add to the AFR 392? Choose your turbo based on whatever power output you want. If you want to make 1,000 horsepower, get 1,000 horsepower turbo. If you only want to make 700, get 700. If you only want to make 500, then don't get a turbo because you're 392 with AFR heads on. It's probably already going to make 500. Have you ever messed with the Neon SRT4? I have not done anything with those motors. There was one of those that was modded when I was out at the car farm. One of their sons had one that was making lots of power. It was a built motor with the various kinds of upgrades. And that motor obviously has a lot more potential than the 8-valve Omni GLHS motor does, but still, it's it's just a later version, just an evolution. What eBay turbo? Again, you got to tell me how much power you want to make. That's going to determine what you want to do. If you only want to make 300 horsepower, then the stock one is going to be pretty close to that. If you want to make 400, it's going to be a little bit bigger. If you want to make 500, it's going to be a 3076. If you want to go beyond that, a 3582. You want 500 horsepower for 900 RPM to 9,000. Okay. Good luck with that. James, man, I'm sorry to hear. Turbo Nitrous Omni, nope, not interested in that. $400 would traumatize the Neon. I think that they're making quite a bit more than that than the one that was there. Manual, all cams are supercharger cams as well. The Neons actually handle very well. If anybody remembers from way back in the day, the Neon ACR or even the Neon, like I don't know if they're Neon Cup or Neon Challenge, where everybody raced the same Neons. It was a spec series, and that was really good racing. What is the Omni? It will have AC, yes, and we're still kicking around the potential of cruise control, which the Omni didn't really originally come with. What about the old ZTEC 2-liter? Was that the Focus SVT? The SVT came after the ZTEC. Where's a good place to buy an LT? Are you talking about the LT engine family? You ever tested an LS706 head with a bigger intake valve? We have flow tested that. I have not run one on the dyno, but it did improve the flow rate. And especially if you take that bigger valve, like you put a 2-inch valve in it, take that bigger intake valve and then unshroud the chamber. And that works pretty well. Both my GLH turbos had dealer installed cruise controls. You could get them with dealer installed stuff. It's pretty elaborate. We're trying to do it so that we would use the cruise control off of a factory installed cruise control from another vehicle, but it might take a different harness and a different ECU. For a 4.2-liter V6 daily with 268 NA horsepower to make close to 400, the smallest turbo possible, and air cooling, which should be potentially a good match. 400 horsepower, I'd pick a 3076. GT 3076. They're inexpensive. The guys from Max Speeding have them. Lots of different places have them. That'll be a pretty common size. If you lower compression for a boosted motor build, NA power will be down. Yes, but under boost, you have a bigger charge volume. Do you get more boosted power from the extra charge volume? I have never seen that. What I see is if you run, and I'm measuring it based off boost. So if you have an NA motor that makes 10 horsepower less than another one because you lowered the compression, when you run 8 pounds of boost, it's still going to be less. The one with lower compression will still be less. I think that the SVT motor might have been a Duratec. And we ran, back in the day, we ran superchargers on those because Jackson Racing had blower kits for those. Yeah, Michael, not interested in a Dakota Digital thing. I want a factory one. Admiral, you don't have to worry about blocks. You put a texted block on it. Mahovich uses those and he makes 2,500 or 3,000 horsepower with it. So it will do that. That's more than you're going to make. So just put that one in there. DC Garage. First gen Neon ACRs were great autocross cars. I would believe that. Is engine swap supply a scam? Randy, I think I already answered that question. I don't know anything about them. I don't know if it's a company, if it's a shop, whatever it is. I don't know anything about it. Michael, will extra charge volume help spool a turbo quicker? No, in my experience, the motor that makes the most low speed power, which is going to be the one that has higher compression, will have better boost response. I haven't ever seen that not work. Twin turbo 6.8 liter V10. I have shorty Borlas. Okay, I want low and mid range. Obviously, we'll be geared with 37s. What kind of power is that thing making? I think it's around 300 horsepower. So you need 2 small turbos probably. Yeah, more compression adds spool up, as I was discussing. Billet wheel YSI versus a cast wheel. I don't know about either one of those, but the guys at Vortec could answer you because they've done flow data on both of those. The air rides on those Fords were kind of notorious for going out. It's a cool idea, though. Christopher, I think we could, that's what we're talking about. We're trying to figure out a way, when I say we, mostly Ben, is trying to figure out a way to make that work. Cruise control for me, it was just on my wish list. It was not really critical for the GLH because I honestly don't know how far I'm going to be driving that, like whether or not I would take that car and drive it down to West Tech and do a bunch of testing with it. I may just trailer it. Is there such a thing as too much ballast ring? Yes, most definitely. General amount of timing to take out when the supercharged and spraying nitrous on top. It depends. Isn't lowering the compression just a band-aid for improper tuning and fuels? Yes and no. I mean, if you have enough octane, you can get away with a lot of stuff. But again, it gives you a safety margin, which a lot of people want. Too much ballast ring causes lots of problems. Lots of guys put, like everybody wants the they want to run a camshaft that's like a 600 lift cam or a 590 lift cam. But, oh, I'm going to put 660 springs in it. No, that's a bad idea. You want the spring actually to be fairly close to coil bind, within 30 or 40 thousandths, because you get less wonky motion in the spring. You don't want to overspring. You want to have the amount of spring pressure that you need to have the stability that you need to work with the camshaft. And it's not just rate either. It's frequency of the spring that you need to have that works with the camshaft. That's why guys that actually do spintron testing with their springs and their camshafts, very, very important. So if you're going to look for somebody that has that kind of combination, look for somebody that's done that kind of testing. That's very important, because you can't cure like a bad cam design with more spring pressure. In fact, a lot of times, if you have an erratic camshaft design that's unstable and you add spring rate to it, a lot of times it makes it worse. So more spring rate is bad. How do you find optimum spring pressure? Well, mostly through experience. And so that's why you talk to the cam manufacturers that have designed the cam and hopefully the spring combination to work with that camshaft. So you figure out, okay, how much RPM do I want to run? What camshaft am I trying to run? And then you have a spring that works with that combination. Chevy 350 with a turbo, a good idea? Yes. I don't even have to read the rest of it. What's the tick noise third gen Coyotes are becoming famous for? No idea. Safe inlet air temperatures within E85. I would suggest putting an intercooler on if you're asking that question. What if the erratic cam is also the right cam? It won't be. It'll be the wrong cam. Have you ever used Pac 12 18s? I think I have in the past. .294 comp cam. Is that a hydraulic roller cam? Is it an HR 294? A 468 with AFR 265 heads. If it's a hydraulic, well, whether it's a hydraulic roller cam or a flat tapping cam, there is a proper spring for you to put in there and run it. Without intercooler, I'm seeing 150 degrees. I see. That's why I don't like running a lot. I know a lot of people like running E85 and no intercooler. That's why I don't like doing that. I don't like having high charge temperatures. Do gear drives really make large harmonic issues with valve train? They do transmit the they transmit stuff to the valve train. I still use them, but I'm solid flat tap it. Why do you use a gear drive? I mean, a modern chain is like way better. The only reason you should use a gear drive is because you like the blower kind of noise. I'm going to twin turbo B-headed motor on a forged block. Shooting for low 4 digits. I'm just worried about the CV joints. So why, if you're only going for 1,000 horsepower or whatever, why are you having all this concern about blocks? All the blocks will do that. When ordering pistons, an FP designation in front of the stock number means flipped piston. Nice. Do you think a 12 valve Cummings will work for a daily driver? Yes. That might mean you just lack the instrumentation to take advantage of the lower compression ratio. I don't, if that's directed at me, I don't lack instrumentation. The people that argue that you should use lower compression are the people that want you to measure it a different way. Not the way that it adds more power. Well, what if you're running out of octane? What if you're running on 87 octane? Yeah, then lower compression might be a better idea. Best Junkyard turbo. I don't think I would recommend Junkyard turbos for that. I think what I would do is get a new cheap turbo. Ford 300 is a factory gear-driven cam. Would a G3582 be a good turbo for a cammed 11.5 to 1 544 valve? No, because that's going to be a 500 to 600 horsepower turbo, so you're going to want to make more than that. On a 5.4, you're going to want a GT45. So is the Ford 2.8 liter V6 a great little engine? I don't know. I've never tested it. The only one I can ever remember driving was, I thought that was the engine that was in the little Capri that a buddy of mine had, which I love those Capris. Ray, I'm sorry to be off topic. There's really no topic right now. I'm going to close out this poll because we're going to get done here in just a second. Have you ever gone over which is a better wideband to street tune? No, most of the widebands will work fine for what you're doing on the street. I haven't found one that's better than others. Usually the ECU that you have has some sort of wideband that's attached to it. If you're running, especially if it's something that's running under closed loop, you'll be able to see what the air fuel is and you'll be able to log it or be able to watch it in real time. There are lots of different air fuel meters that you could put in if you're not doing it in that method, if you're using a separate O2 sensor. The guys from AEM have stuff. The Innovate stuff we ran for a long time in the Honda when we were doing the Bonneville stuff. But as long as something tells you that it's not 14.7 and that it is 11.5 instead under boost, you're going to be fine. Brian, somebody's mentioning something about titanium retainers. Brian Tooley did some interesting testing on the Spintron and showed that the titanium stuff, which is not a great deal lighter than the steel stuff, also might even have a little bit more deflection than the steel stuff does. So I thought that was interesting. And it might not be strength deflection. It might be a frequency thing. Sometimes you can find an NOS cruise control kit for the Omni on a well-known auction site. What kind of fuel ratios did you run with the 8500? We run 11.5 to 1, but we run that on a gas scale. Yeah, Noodle's modern engines, the stuff that you can get from the service ports is it's amazing, the stuff that they log. Aaron, you are late. We're getting ready to go. John, the earlier that you're making torque, the more problematic that can be. A titanium exhaust does really look good. And it's really good to make Russian jets from, too. Cody, I think your 3800 combination is on the right track. That's the way our air fuel meter reads. It's set up so that we see the same air fuel ratio that we're used to. It obviously takes a great deal more fuel to achieve that because of the stoic value is different, but yes, SR-71s were also, in fact, that's where we got most of our titanium for building stuff was from Russia. It's amazing. It's amazing the things that people argue about. Bug spray. Richard, I got to say thank you, sir, on priming the oil pump tip. I started to take the whole front of the engine apart until you told me that I primed the pump on it. Great pressure. Good. Is compounding a turbo actually worth it? To do what? It depends on what your needs are. What are you trying to achieve? Compound turbos on an LS, in my opinion, are a waste of time because you can get all of the power that you need, ridiculous amounts of power, without having to resort to that. Compounding turbos for a diesel application is a really good idea. What do you think of a standalone turbo oil system? I think it's a lot of work. I don't know why you would want to do that unless you were pre-priming it for startup or something. JP7 fuel is what they use in this SR-71. One more minute. Speaking of SR-71s, I did get to go to a discussion. I think it was the Adventurers Club or something, where they had SR-71 pilots that were speaking and talking. They would never tell us exactly. They still are sworn to secrecy. Wouldn't tell us how fast it went, but they were telling us about some of the things that they did when they were test flying these things. It's pretty amazing. And after going to that, and I got to see those guys, and I also got to see guys that were at the guys from Easy Company that were at the Battle of the Bulge, and that's why when I see people acting tough and acting like they know everything, so I just have to laugh at them. Like, look, you have no idea what real people are and what they've done because you're not that. The fact that you put a fancy intercooler on your car and I'm the fastest guy in the stock block in the world, that's great. That's nothing compared to what real giants have done, giants of humanity, and these guys were that. It's amazing stuff. Look up the SR-71 Blackbird pilot speed story. Yeah, Dan, they really were close to astronauts. And and even today, I mean, the SR-71 was designed I don't know, 60 years ago. And there's still nothing today that, in my opinion, that looks anywhere near as like ultra modern and Star Warsy. To me, none of the modern jets do. I mean, I like them. I like a P-51 better than most of the modern jets, but that SR-71 is like, to me, is the pinnacle of aeronautics. And I might be going to the Reno Air Races tomorrow, by the way. Mr. Drummer, when are we racing Omnis against each other? Mine's not really a race car. The Omni weighs, I think, in the 2,300 pound range, probably. Yeah, the Star Wars Naboo fighter. That's right. It does look a lot like that. I haven't really looked at the new Mustang, so I'm not ready to make a comment about that. I did get to see a U-2 spy plane land at one of the air shows that I went to. It's pretty cool. Do you want to say knock ears? I have listened to detonation through a copper tube, if that's the same thing. The B-2 or the B-1 bomber? Is that the one you're talking about? Alan, are you going to be at Reno? Is that? P-38 is another good one too. I watched a lot of that stuff actually while I was driving on my trip back from Ohio. Got to be in a chase vehicle for the U-2 though. That's cool. Mike, we already had a whole live feed on that. Dan, I did not buy lottery tickets. Did I need to buy them when I was in Ohio? See, now everybody's throwing out their favorite planes and helicopters, which is awesome. Maybe we'll have to have a plane talk for one of the live feeds. And on that note, A-12 faster than SR-71. That's right. That was the CIA spy plane. Thank you guys all for showing up. Hope you guys have a good weekend. May or may not be back tomorrow because I might be on the road. Might be back in time. We'll see. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you later.